Imagine this, just 4 races ago, Max Verstappen was staring down a massive 104-point deficit in the 2025 Formula 1 Drivers' Championship. The title at this point after the Dutch GP pretty much seemed out of reach, with McLaren dominating, having won 2s, the only exception being that of the Dutch GP where Lando had to retire. But fast forward, right after COTA, he's done it again and maximized the amount of points in the sprint race and a win. And now he's standing just 40 points behind Oscar Piastri and not too far off of Lando as well. Honestly, we talked about this, it looked like a lost cause even with some hope remaining. But right now, Max is defying the odds, he's making the impossible happen. And we're definitely seeing a cool, calm, collected Oscar Piastri not be the man that he was the first half of the season. So right now, it's becoming actually pretty realistic for Max to win his 5th championship. Just came back from a wedding. That is why I am in a suit. I still can barely hear out of my ears and maybe my voice sounds a bit different, but wanted to talk to you guys. I have a question for you all that I want you to comment. If Max Verstappen truly wins and comes back from this crazy point differential, tell me down in the comments, do you believe him to be the greatest of all time if he does it, if he wins it? Because for me, it's going to be very hard to fight. And anyways, if you're new here, go ahead and subscribe. Would mean the world. Thank you all for the love. Let's talk about it. All the way up until mid-season, Max Verstappen, he had a couple of GPs where the car looked phenomenal. Let's say Saudi, but then Oscar Piastri got him there. Japan, he was phenomenal. And there were a couple other tracks where the Red Bull truly could show off its strengths, but then Bahrain showed off how weak it was. They ended up making an upgrade happen. Late on into the season, Monza was a big turning point for the team. And since Monza, we've had Baku, Singapore, and now COTA, where he's gained points on the McLaren boys in every single one of these GPs. And in COTA, this was a domination. Max, from start to finish, didn't look like he was under any threat. Leclerc, I will say, had a pretty decent GP, didn't stay too far behind them, which was nice to see for the Ferrari team. Finally, a little bit of hope. But Max, cool, calm, collected. This is unbelievable how this guy drives and the consistency that he has from race to race. I've talked about his driving style. I've talked about really the sudden breakthrough, but it's incredible to me that we're going on and on from race to race and he is continuing to make the impossible happen. As I stated, this was 104 points away, which has pretty much never happened. You can look back at the Kimi Raikkonen of 2007. That was a pretty crazy comeback. Now, that was fortunate that the McLarens were fighting, kind of reminiscent of that. And with a couple of clutch upgrades, bringing in Lauren Mekis, which I will say, I was a bit skeptical in the start. I really thought Christian Horner was still the guy to lead the Red Bull team. But I gotta say, I've been proven wrong. Lauren Mekis comes in, changes a couple of philosophies in the team. They start trusting Max Verstappen a lot more than the computer simulations, which are telling them different things for the setup. Decide to go with a rear wing that's super chopped off. And Max dominates in Monza, even overtaking Lando after the start. Singapore was a bit of a gritty P2. I don't think they were the quickest car. I actually believe the McLaren to be faster. But as George Russell has just said in a recent interview right after COTA, it's becoming a Formula 1 race only till turn 1. And whoever ends up leading with this amount of dirty air, it's very hard to overtake. Lando struggled so hard to overtake Leclerc. Do I believe the defending was great? Yeah, I definitely cannot say anything bad about Leclerc. He's always been a great defender and a very underrated trait of the Ferrari driver. But if that was Max Verstappen, I do believe he would have overtaken him a lot quicker. Lando's not shown the best racecraft, while Max Verstappen has been at the top of his game ever since he's came into the sport. Whether you like it or not, it is controversial, but he's phenomenal when it comes to making overtaking moves and exercising the rule book to its finest. I also think we've seen a bit of a resurgence in Lando. There have not been as many mistakes in the race. He did go for that nice overtake in Singapore. Some people think it's a bit controversial. I believe it's a racing move. Yes, a little bit of contact, but what's going to happen? Everything's going to be clean? I don't really believe that even in Formula 1 with these cars being the way they are. He's found his form. COTA's always been a good GP for him. Mexico's another one of those tracks where Lando is really good and Oscar is not that great. The only upcoming GP that I can really see Oscar maybe being on top is the Qatar GP. And while I am talking about great things for Max Verstappen, we got to look to the other end. For Oscar Piastri, this has been a very bad run, and honestly, he's cracking under pressure. As I talked about with George Russell saying it's pretty much a race till turn 1, qualifying is now the most important aspect of the weekend. It wasn't like that at the start of the regulations, but in 2025, so much dirty air has been developed. Your tires just get degraded so hard being behind another driver. And that's really killing racing, which is unfortunate, but for Oscar Piastri and Lando, they're choking it up in qualifying. If you put the 3 sectors together, Lando Norris had the quickest car in COTA yet again, but it was Max that came out on top with 1 lap. Oscar ended up getting P5. In Singapore, he out-qualified Lando, but yet again, had cold feet, could not keep Lando behind even on the race start. And if we look at the sprint race, there is definitely an argument to make that it was Oscar that made the mistake into turn 1, doing a cutback there. Now, I don't really want to go too much in depth with that because that's more of a racing incident to me, but it's something that he cannot afford with him cracking under this pressure as of lately. I've spoken very highly of Oscar Piastri and his mentality. It's been something that's been keeping him ahead of Lando. I don't believe him to be the faster driver in the race. In qualifying, he's been ahead and he's been able to be cool and collected, which has kept him ahead. But now the traits that we're keeping Oscar, it's kind of depleting. In this GP in particular, he destroyed his tires while Lando was able to catch up to Leclerc. And he got lucky that, of course, in typical Ferrari fashion, they barely make it to the end with their brakes being fried. Oscar got it down to about like a 1 second gap. But in general, it was about a 6 to 7 second gap. And George Russell, in a very slow Mercedes, let me add, in COTA was catching him. So the McLaren car is losing some pace. I think the Red Bull has gone up. It looks like the favorited car based off of the tracks we've seen. And we've seen a lot of corner variety in Singapore, Baku, Monza, and now COTA. That's 3 different types of downforce levels, low downforce in Baku and Monza, COTA being about medium to high, and then Singapore being a max downforce. The car looks great in all those conditions. And the McLaren doesn't look as dominant as it used to. So I definitely don't think Oscar has to be winning these races, but he has to be behind and ahead of Lando, who has also closed the gap to 14 points. With races being left in Mexico, Brazil, Las Vegas, and Qatar and Abu Dhabi, 3 out of these 4 tracks have been Max Verstappen tracks, being Mexico, Brazil, and Abu Dhabi. I believe the car is going to be fast in Las Vegas. I've made a video on this. Go ahead and check that out. Don't want to talk too much about my predictions. I will tell you, I'm 100% right now. So got to give myself props there. And with some sprints happening, a 40-point gap, it can definitely be depleted very quickly with Oscar cracking and Lando showing some fight. Don't get me wrong. I think that might end up being what we see P1 and P2 towards the end of the season. I will say Max Verstappen is going to look back at that Spain crash, and he really shot himself in the foot there. If he didn't crash there, there was a possibility of a P4. That would have made this gap 28 points, and we would have seen a big change within the next 3 GPs. A 40-point gap is still pretty decent, but when you got a guy like Max Verstappen, everything is possible, even the impossible in Formula 1. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Please leave a like, subscribe. It would mean the world. Thank you all for the love, and peace.